Are your people working hard but not reaching their full potential? The problem is not effort, it is development. At the Modern Observer Group, we transform workforce development into real performance. Our human-centered achievement programs help your team think better, communicate stronger, and execute at a higher level. That means higher employee engagement, stronger leadership, and measurable results across your organization. If you want a workforce that performs, leads, and delivers, it is time to invest in your people. Visit modernobserver.com and discover how the Modern Observer Group helps you build a workforce that wins.
And welcome to another edition of Carnivore Radio. I'm your under the weather host with Dr. Eric Lopkin, but we will persevere. That's the American way. So a lot going on since last week. In fact, it was kind of flatlining a little bit, more or less, with Iran. But now, after the Apache helicopter shoot down by a drone, things are ramping up. They ramped up last night, and they looks like basically next couple hours it could be showtime. So your thoughts, Doctor?
Yeah, the idea that Iran was ever negotiating in good faith is ridiculous. I mean, they're using any excuse that they can. Oh, somebody came too close to the Strait of Hormuz. They fired on them. They spent the weekend firing on Israel because Israel is firing on Hezbollah.
Yes.
It's time that Trump just said enough is enough and blow up the IRG. Part of the big problem here, and I think we touched on it last week, the president of Iran actually handed in his resignation because they're the ones who've been negotiating, and the supreme leader who runs the IRG is going around blowing shit up.
Yes. And isn't it indicative of basically a fractured leadership? There's no one, you could say the gay Ayatollah is in charge, but that's not really clear. I'm not sure.
Yeah, nobody's heard from him since he took power. The assumption is actually that the generals at the IRG are in charge, but of course they're not participating in the negotiations. They're just trying to blow things up and make threats. So it's time to just take out the IRG, which he should have done in the first place.
100%. And even just to your point that anyone that's even remotely has any remote expertise in the region, including the ex-Shah's son, published something basically ridiculing Trump about what are you thinking about? I mean, this is their playbook. And one of their higher ups basically published a excerpt or maybe even a full book about their art of negotiating or lack thereof. And it's all about what you already know, stretch things out and eventually, and you're stretching out. And also an expert was on, Iranian expert, an expat actually was saying that, yeah, they think stretch it out a little more, sign an agreement, basically maybe 6 months from now. So there's only like, a year and a half worth of Trump's administration. And then if a Democrat comes in, just
yeah, Iran was going to basically ignore any agreement anyway. This is what they did with the nuclear agreement with Obama. When Trump pulled out of it during his first term, the Iranian government said, well, that's fine. We're closer to a nuclear weapon now than we were then, which means they were working on it in violation of the treaty that Obama signed.
Well, wait a second. The treaty, which was basically authored heavily from John Kerry, you'd have to really be on acid to think that was a good deal.
Oh, it wasn't. Well, it wasn't a good deal, but they didn't follow it anyway.
There you go. So 2 strikes and 2.5 strikes and you're out. But so what to kind of wrap this thing up in terms of the situation with Iran, I think it's good news. I think he needs to not pussyfoot around. And in fact, this expat was saying these measured responses in their eyes just exemplify weakness. So I think it's time to rock and roll.
Yeah, a report actually came out just a few days ago, a human rights organization that found there have been more executions by the Iranian government against dissidents than at any time in the last 37 years. This is not a regime that we can allow to stand.
Thank you very much. And to put the carnage in perspective, we lost 55,000, I'm talking deaths in Vietnam. They're close to that with their own people. Obviously, to your point, you can't negotiate with savages like this. That's amazing.
Yeah, they have no interest in negotiation. Their goal is maintain power through terror, period.
Exactly. Well, again, everything has a political spin to it. And very interesting that I saw a CNN poll in another that basically gives the Democrats very little chance for the Senate and not all that great of a chance of flipping the House. And when you look at what happened in Maine with the new face of the Democratic Party, we talked about this last week that the bar's pretty low in a Nazi tattoo, and sexting is the new normal. That doesn't bode well.
Yeah, right now, the Democratic candidate Plattner has 3 sexual assault complaints against him. Obviously, he came into national news with the Nazi swastika tattooed on him.
There you go.
There was another scandal that broke, I believe, last week. I found it really interesting that both Bernie Sanders and AOC over the last few days refused to address his scandals and did not actually come out and endorse him again.
Oh, yes. And to that point, Bernie, the self-hating Jew, communist, and Elizabeth Warren, Native American, both sent their congratulatory messages to him. Nice.
Right. And of course they did, but it's not a surprise that when that's who's representing the Democratic Party, that America is going, you know what? No, we don't want the Democrats to take Congress. And you're seeing that the Democrats have been neutered. Earlier today, Donald Trump signed into law a funding bill for ICE. And because the Senate Republicans did this so well, ICE and Customs and Border Protection is now fully funded through January 20th, 2029. So
that means permanently, in other words, yes.
Right, for the rest of Trump's term, the Democrats have no say over ICE and Customs and Border Protection funding. This means in the last 6 months, the Democrats shut the government down twice and got nothing for it.
I have to ask you a question on that, because Schumer was already in the crapper and Jeffries, I think, is partially retarded. What implications does that have for the both of them?
I don't know that it's got any implications for Schumer. I still stand by the idea that by the time he's up for re-election, he's going to retire. So I think he's just sort of coasting along at this point. Jeffries, if the Democrats actually start to shift, and there have been a number of signs that the moderate Democrats have said enough is enough, and they are starting to slap down the radical left. If that happens, Jeffries is done.
Agreed 100%. And just touching base a little bit on the ICE situation. I also read that the border wall will be completed in the next couple of years.
Yeah, everybody seems to have forgotten about the border wall, but construction on that has been moving along. There's a reason that you don't see all these people coming in at the border anymore, because what Trump did was effective. He actually shut down the border with no new laws, and honestly, nothing different than what the presidents prior to Biden and Obama, even Obama did the same things that Trump did, but the Democrats were okay with it because it was one of theirs doing it.
Yeah, that is true. Absolutely. But it's also indicative of the shift, because we have tapes now, there's tapes out there of Clinton, Hillary even saying that. Well, I mean, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and Schumer, even
Yes.
Pelosi talking about the need, criticizing Bush for not having a strong enough border.
Right.
How things have changed.
Yeah. And then
Kind of crazy.
during the Biden years, they just decided, you know what? We don't want a border. We want illegals to be able to vote, because that way they'll vote for us.
And it's the only way they stay in power, because you look at some of their traditional base. Let's look at African Americans. Yes, are they voting in majority for Republicans? No, but there's a 20% change, which is huge. Hispanics are like 53, 55 in the GOP camp, because they have traditional values. They're not into transgender, and you can just go through the whole list. And even Jews, it's like less than 50%. That used to be a foundation, even though a small percentage of the population of the Democratic Party. So I think they're in big trouble, and also with the scandals, with the corruption. Vance just referred Walz to the Attorney General and the Department of Justice. Now he's completely cooked, correct? But what's the big point? He's not really that relevant anymore. But it's yet demonstrating the corrupt nature and the modus operandi of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, the House Oversight Committee released a report that's what led Vance to recommend the charges. In the report, they found Walz and his administration had known for years about the fraud. They retaliated against whistleblowers who presented the evidence. And the only defense they had was, well, they would rather let the fraud go through than be accused of racism because it was Somalis that were committing the fraud.
Yeah, and it also got so weird that, I'll use the term, transitioned or redesigned the Minnesota flag. Essentially looks like the flag of Somalia. Oh yeah, it does.
It was a ridiculous situation. There will be charges against Walz and a number of his administration. I honestly think somebody's going to do jail time.
I think it could be him.
It could be. I hope it is, because as governor, he was ultimately responsible for this.
100% correct. Then we look at, in terms of the Democratic Party, we look at the races in California. It does look like Hilton has clinched a spot for the runoff for the gubernatorial race. But then we have the Oriole race, and you really can't make that up. Ramen Noodle was crying because she even knew that she lost, but all of a sudden, Shazam! She's now in the running. I mean, not in the running. She will face off against Mayor Bass.
Yeah, in LA, Spencer Pratt was eliminated almost literally at the last moment by a flood of votes. For Ramen, and it is absolutely ridiculous because everybody who knows anything about voting is looking at this going, it is a statistical impossibility for them to have that many votes for that one candidate all at the last minute. I mean,
Yes, it must.
she actually got more votes than any other candidate, and most of the candidates combined during that last few days of counting.
Yeah, I guess it's the new math.
That's exactly what it is. And meanwhile, Steve Hilton did clinch a spot in the general election, which means at this moment, California actually has a 50-50 shot of having a Republican governor. No Republican has won a statewide office in California since 2006.
That is correct. I think that will be the if it happens, will be the shot heard around the U.S. at least. And I think with Bass and Ramen Noodle running LA, I think it's actually good for the Republican Party, because then you'll have Hilton as governor, but then you'll have a juxtaposed situation of Hilton as governor cleaning things up, and then LA continuing to go down the crapper. Correct?
Yeah, I think Hilton is still facing an uphill battle.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Yes.
Not simply because of the sheer number of Democrats in California, but you can never underestimate the California Democratic Party's ability to rig an election.
We had demonstrated just hours ago.
Right, as demonstrated in LA.
You don't have to actually go into the history books for that one. And I think this has political implications as well as obviously economic. But inflation is the rate of inflation is now the highest in 4 years. Not a good thing. I know some of it has to do with the war with Iran, but your thoughts?
Yeah, a lot of it does have to do with the fuel prices in Iran, but fuel actually hasn't gone up as much as people expected it to.
Yes.
There is a lot of factors going into this. But what I find amazing is if you actually watch the coverage of the numbers, the media is up in, oh my God, it's 4.3%. That's horrible. These same pundits, when inflation was over 9% under the Biden administration, were it's
Crickets.
transitory. It's not a problem. You know what? Inflation at this point is a major problem, not because 4.3 is so high, but because inflation never went down after the Biden highs. It's been climbing ever since. It's cumulative. Since Biden took office, prices are up more than 35%.
That is correct. You see it every day. So there is something, we talk about the diminished chances of the Dems with the midterms, but that's something seriously to watch for as we move closer to that. And on a kind of a lighter note, it looks like Kamala and her esteemed predatory husband, just kidding, are sleeping in separate houses. Oh, well.
I'm going to look at this. It doesn't necessarily mean there's marital trouble. I know a number of couples that, because of snoring, sleep in separate bedrooms. If you had a spouse that cackled like Kamala did, you'd want to be in a separate house too.
I agreed with that. Real quick, also, there were, there's no proof. There was some talk that she was having a little fling, but that is not substantiated. But I just think it is funny because I have a twisted sense of humor that since she lost the election, it's been a cumulative train wreck in her life, correct?
It really has. And now apparently she is having a war against Gavin Newsom.
Correct.
They are having a war of words. They're battling over books. And It looks like they're both planning on running for president in 2028. I think that's going to be hysterical. I think that's probably the best thing that could happen to a moderate Democrat, because they're going to be going at each other, and a moderate Democrat can step in and wipe them both out of the primaries.
Yes, I think it's a Mensa against Mensa battle.
Oh, yes.
Well, Dr. Lopkin, another great show. As always, our listeners can be a part of the process as well, can't they?
Yes, we want to hear from you. Let us know what you think. You can go to xvadio.com/connect. Send us a message. You can also message us at the Carnivore Radio Facebook page. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Carnivore Radio wherever you listen to podcasts. And you can catch every episode at xvadio.com, the Carnivore Radio website, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
Thank you, Dr. Lopkin. I will see you next week.
We'll see you then.